Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second Demystifying the DOJ of 2025. My name is Sara Farouk, and I am the Community Outreach Manager for the Inland Empire and Border Regions at the Office of Community Awareness, Response, and Engagement, or CARE, here at the California Department of Justice, and I will be your host today. My colleague, Tong Tao, will be moderating the chat and posting important information there, so please follow along in the chat box as well. Please note that closed captioning, Spanish, and ASL interpretation are available. To access closed captioning, please select the More tab in the menu bar. Spanish and American Sign Language interpretation are available by selecting the world icon. The focus of this quarter's Demystifying the DOJ presentation is on the California Department of Justice's Division of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse, or also known as DMFEA. We have a great program for you today, starting with remarks from Special Assistant Attorney General James Toma, top policy advisor to the Attorney General on health-related matters. Afterward, we have the honor of hearing from a representative from the DMFEA team, Supervising Deputy Attorney General Megan Anderson, who will be sharing information with us about the work of the Division of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse. We will have some time for questions. And thank you everyone who submitted questions in advance. We have shared them with the presenters. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can submit them through the Q&A box below. Lastly, if you are joining us today as a reporter or affiliated with the press, please direct your questions to agpressoffice@doj.ca.gov. It is now my pleasure to introduce Special Assistant Attorney General James Toma, who will give us a short intro on the Division of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse and the AG's focus on this issue area.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everybody. My name is James Toma, and I'm a Special Assistant Attorney General, where I advise Attorney General Rob Bonta on all healthcare matters. So I'm very fortunate to work for the Department of Justice in our ongoing efforts to make healthcare more accessible and affordable, and to protect the most vulnerable Californians in various healthcare settings. As part of those efforts, I work with the Division of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse, which is known by the acronym DMFEA. And I'm very excited for today's presentation, which should be highly informative and also timely since next Monday marks the annual National Elder Abuse Awareness Day. The work of the division is incredibly important, protecting some of the most vulnerable persons in our state from fraud, abuse, and neglect. And as you'll hear, the division's work includes investigations and prosecutions of elder abuse that can occur in long-term care facilities, such as nursing homes and other types of facilities, and includes non-institutional settings where Medi-Cal services are provided. Because many seniors must rely on other persons for their care and services, they can be at risk of abuse and neglect. And at DOJ, our fight for affordable and accessible healthcare also includes criminal and civil prosecutions of those who defraud California's Medi-Cal program, as fraud diverts scarce healthcare resources from those who are most vulnerable. The Medi-Cal program provides health insurance for persons with limited income and resources, and it's vitally important that we preserve those resources for seniors and dependent adults and others who need healthcare. The division works with state and federal prosecutors and whistleblowers against providers who defraud the Medi-Cal program, such as pharmaceutical manufacturers, owners of long-term care facilities, and other providers. Under Attorney General Bonta, the division's recovered nearly $1 billion in civil and criminal prosecutions. And now to provide further information on DMFEA and to give you a sense of some of the vital work that DMFEA does, we have a senior member from our DMFEA team here for today's presentation, Supervising Deputy Attorney General Megan Anderson. Please take it away, Megan.
Thank you, James. I want to start my presentation with you all this morning by saying I am very, very excited to be here to tell you about the important work that we do at DMFEA. And as has been previously mentioned, DMFEA is an acronym for the Division of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse. I've been an attorney for about 18 years, and I've dedicated my career to public service as a criminal prosecutor. I began my career as a deputy district attorney in Modesto at the Stanislaus County District Attorney's Office. And while I was there, I worked on the elder abuse unit. And I became very dedicated and aware of the challenges and the importance of elder abuse prosecution in our state. So in 2018, when I decided to make the move up to Sacramento and join the Department of Justice, I was thrilled at the opportunity to continue my fight against elder abuse at DMFEA. DMFEA has a twofold mission. First of all, we combat fraud in the Medi-Cal program. It is our job to safeguard and protect Medi-Cal funds. Our second part, or the second part of our mission, is to prosecute elder abuse cases, particularly those in facilities. And not just elder abuse cases, but abuse against the elderly population and also disabled adults. These are two very, very important missions to the citizens of California. And it is our job at DMFEA to protect the Medi-Cal program and make sure that California's facilities are safe for the elderly and also disabled adults. When I joined the DOJ in 2018, I didn't really understand, to be honest with you, what Medicaid was and how it related to Medi-Cal in California. And what I learned is that Medicaid in California is referred to as the Medi-Cal program. DMFEA is what's called a Medicaid fraud control unit. In the 1970s, when the Medicaid program was established by Congress, they realized soon thereafter that they needed oversight of the program to prevent fraud and abuse of Medi-Cal funding or Medicaid funding. In some states, Medicaid is referred to simply as Medicaid, but in other states, it has a special or different name. For example, in Tennessee, Medicaid is referred to as TennAid, and in California, it's referred to as Medi-Cal. Medicaid or Medi-Cal in California is administered and monitored and managed by the Department of Healthcare Services in California. DMFEA works collaboratively and is partnered with DHCS, the Department of Healthcare Services, to make sure that Medicaid funding through the Medi-Cal program is protected and used properly. Every state has to certify that either they do not have Medicaid fraud or they have to have a Medicaid fraud control unit. In California, DMFEA is our Medicaid fraud control unit. We are part of a national association of Medicaid fraud units, and we work collaboratively and meet and talk together about different areas that are coming up and different themes or trends that are coming up in the Medicaid program in every state. As this slide shows, we are 75% federally funded and 25% funded by the state. We have close partnerships with a number of different agencies, including the Department of Social Services, the Department of Public Health, as I already mentioned, the Department of Healthcare Services. We also work closely with our federal partners, including the FBI, the Office of Health and Human Services, as well as the Office of the Inspector General. We also work closely on the local level with local level law enforcement agencies and adult protective services. Medi-Cal in California is an extremely important program. As this slide shows, we have over 39 million people in California, and of those 39 citizens, nearly 15 million receive some form of Medi-Cal funding. Medi-Cal provides healthcare services to individuals and families who are low income, or individuals and families who have a disability, a long-term disability. Nearly $152 million is spent every year in the Medi-Cal program, and over 13,000 healthcare workers work to provide some sort of Medi-Cal healthcare benefits, including over 400 hospitals. So what these statistics really show is the importance of the Medi-Cal program and just how important DMFEA's role in protecting the Medi-Cal program really is. DMFEA has regional offices throughout the state. You may have previously heard of us by our prior name, which was the Bureau of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse, or BMFEA. But in September of 2020, we expanded and became one of 4 divisions within the Office of the Attorney General. Since 2020, we've grown a lot, hiring more agents, more auditors, more attorneys to help our mission. And we have established additional offices so that we are truly a presence in California, from the true north all the way down to our border. We have offices in Redding, Sacramento, which is our main office, and Dublin in Northern California, Fresno and Burbank in Central California, and offices throughout Southern California, including West Covina, Orange, Riverside, and like I said, San Diego. As I said earlier, we really focus on 2 primary areas at DMFEA: Medi-Cal fraud and elder abuse and dependent adult abuse. This slide shows some of the work that we do in the fraud arena. Our fraud is really focused on 3 kinds of fraud. The first one being probably our biggest type of fraud that we handle, provider fraud. It's important to recognize that DMFEA does not focus on prosecuting beneficiary fraud. In other words, we don't focus on prosecuting criminal activity by people who receive Medi-Cal benefits. We're focused on the fraud schemes that are perpetrated by providers of Medi-Cal services, namely healthcare professionals or individuals who are providing some sort of service and in exchange receiving Medi-Cal taxpayer dollars. It's unbelievable the number of different creative schemes that people come up with to defraud the Medi-Cal system, and we are always on top of investigating those. Some schemes that we see are billing or false billing by dentists, transportation services, facilities such as nursing homes or assisted living facilities, and hospice providers. The list goes on, and we are always on top of those new schemes. Additionally, we have a criminal section, but also we have a civil section, and our civil attorneys are always working on a variety of cases that involve, again, many of the false billing allegations that we see on the criminal side. One way our civil attorneys are combating fraud is through whistleblower qui tam cases. We receive these complaints, and after approximately 60 days, we decide whether or not we want to intervene on behalf of the government. And we can take those cases brought by whistleblowers and turn them into civil actions to recoup damages for the state. Additionally, our civil work continues under the False Claims Act, in which we can pursue violations and recoup funds for Californians. This work we often do collectively with the federal government, and we've received and achieved really great outcomes on behalf of the nation and Californians. Additionally, while it's not mentioned here on the fraud side, we also do work under Business and Professions Code 17200, the unfair competition law in California. This allows us specifically to work on understaffing fraud in facilities such as nursing homes. And it allows us to see facilities and determine facilities that are understaffed. If you know anything about nursing homes, then you know that the most important component is staffing. Low staffing can lead to abuse, such as falls, pressure sores, medication errors. So it's important for us to look at those staffing and pursue those cases. On the flip side of DMFEA, leaving fraud, we also have our abuse and neglect work. This work is primarily focused on abuse and neglect in facilities. When I say facilities, I'm talking about assisted living facilities, nursing homes, hospitals, as well as homes, oftentimes residential homes for our disabled adults. These healthcare facilities are ones that receive Medi-Cal beneficiaries as residents, and that allows us to focus our work and look at those facilities for possible abuse and neglect. Our jurisdiction includes any facilities that directly receive Medi-Cal funding, but also in boarding care facilities where we have 2 or more unrelated adults receiving substantial assistance with the activities of daily living, aka ADL. This includes folks who need help with eating, changing, They can't cook for themselves. They need help perhaps walking or bathing or toileting. Those sorts of activities of daily living that they just need an extra hand in help with. We also can pursue cases in a non-institutional setting, assuming that we have an allegation of abuse and neglect that occurs in connection with the provision of a Medi-Cal healthcare service. We have two examples here on the slide: pediatric dentistry or transportation services. Another really great example is when you have an IHSS provider. IHSS stands for In-Home Support Services. It's a Medi-Cal service that is provided that allows folks to stay in their home but receive care from an IHSS provider. But if that provider somehow engages in financial or physical abuse of the person living at home, we would have jurisdiction to investigate and prosecute those cases of abuse. This slide shows a variety of our personnel. We truly are a multidisciplinary team at DMFEA. We're also unique in that we're a state agency that houses special agents who work alongside prosecutors hand in hand together under one roof. This slide shows that not only do we have special agents and deputy attorney generals, both criminal and civil attorneys, we also have support staff in the form of legal analysts and secretaries, as well as medical professionals. On my team, which is the facilities enforcement team, we have 2 nurses who help us understand the complex medical complaints and cases that we work up. We also have data development analysts. These folks are really important when they look at the Medi-Cal billing data for red flags of fraud. They help uncover unusual trends in billing that might show that, something's going on here. We might have a fraud case on our hands. We also have complaint and referral analysis who review the thousands of complaints that we receive every year from the public and other health oversight agencies. They help us get through those complaints so that we can focus and pinpoint our resources on the cases that are most likely to also affect Californians in a positive way, but result in convictions and good outcomes in court. We have digital forensic specialists who help us uncover the digital evidence that we find on computers and cell phones. These fraudsters that we deal with love a good piece of digital evidence, and we love uncovering it through our specialists. And lastly, we have investigative auditors. These folks are like criminal accountants in many ways. They help trace the money that the fraudsters use or bill, but also are really, really essential on our financial abuse cases, where they can look at bank records and uncover the financial abuse that can occur. We have a lot of in-house expertise at DMFEA, and I'm very, very proud, particularly of this slide, because it shows the wide variety of work that we do, but also just how important our staff is, not just our agents and attorneys, but everyone in every part of the team who comes together to provide this expertise that you don't find elsewhere in the state. For example, on here we have our SNF staffing ratio analysis, that we utilize to identify facilities that are chronically understaffed and have bad outcomes in their nursing homes. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Hospice fraud is another big one that we're combating, particularly in the Los Angeles area these days. We have investigators who are really tuned in on the trends and exactly what is happening in these hospice companies as they try to defraud the Medi-Cal program. Healthcare fraud schemes is another one that our agents are great at. Bank review and financial records. I can tell you that before this job, I don't know if I would have really been able to do what they do and follow the money, looking at thousands of pages of bank records, but I've learned a lot from our financial auditors and accountants that we work with. Also on here are our vulnerable victims and witnesses. This is a huge part of what we do because we serve 2 very vulnerable populations in California, the elderly, as well as dependent and disabled adults. And it's important that we work with them in a compassionate, effective, and kind way. And we have people who can do that and who are also telling Californians about what we do in our outreach events. This is a slide that really focuses on something that's very unique about DMFEA and something that, as a prosecutor, I absolutely love. We have a state inspection authority that allows us to look at the business records that are compiled and maintained by Medi-Cal providers. In essence, the theory is that if you are a provider of healthcare services and you are receiving taxpayer dollars, then you have to open up your business books for inspection by the state and by DMFEA so that we can make sure that you are providing these Medi-Cal services in an appropriate and honest way. Part of this inspection authority also allows us to do surprise inspections under the Operation SAFE program. These are surprise inspections at skilled nursing facilities where we go in usually to investigate a criminal complaint. And we go inside and we look at the facility and we look at their records and we make sure that the care that they are providing to the elderly residents in their facility is safe and appropriate. I have 5 examples of some of our cases that we've been working on at DMFEA to give you a flavor of what we do on the criminal side. I'm, as I mentioned, a criminal attorney, so these are all criminal cases that I'm aware of in our office. I mentioned provider fraud, and right now hospice fraud is a hot topic issue. This is an example of one of our cases in which there were 2 companies who were transporting patients back and forth through a really complex network of bribes and kickbacks and financial incentives to recruit people to hospice. The problem was that these folks were actually not eligible for hospice. They did not have a terminal illness, nor were they at the end of their life. And in fact, many of the people who were listed as hospice beneficiaries didn't even know that these companies had signed them up. At the end, these 2 companies billed $4.2 million to Medi-Cal. But DMFEA investigated, and as a result, we got 6 felony convictions, and these folks are awaiting sentencing at the end of the month. And another example on the finance side is this criminal case, People versus Engelbrecht. In this case, the defendant stole over $500,000 from her elderly mother while she was acting as power of attorney. It was terrible. In fact, the victim had Huntington's disease, and she wasn't able to live independently and lived in a boarding care home, which gave us jurisdiction to investigate this case. This case is an important example because it's one in which the local district attorney's office and the local police department declined to prosecute. But a civil attorney who was involved in the case knew about DMFEA and she referred it to us. Because of the expertise that we have, specifically a forensic auditor on our staff, we were able to really do a deep dive on this case and spend a bit more time on it than the police department had been able to. And we uncovered clear financial abuse by the defendant. We took this case to trial, the defendant was convicted, and she was sentenced to 3 years state prison pending appeal, which is ongoing. This is an example of a facility neglect case from my team. I mentioned that I'm on the facilities enforcement team, aka FET. Again, we love our acronyms. What my team does is we focus on abuse and neglect in facilities, and we handle those either through criminal prosecution or through civil action. This particular case involves an allegation in which a licensed vocational nurse oversaw an assisted living facility. A resident was found on the floor in the facility in the dining room, and this LVN told the staff not to call 911, to put the resident back to bed because it was just a mini stroke. But it wasn't just a mini stroke, it was a catastrophic stroke. And as a result of this LVN's neglect and unwillingness to even call 911 and seek any care, the resident unfortunately passed away. This is a criminal case in which we've filed felony charges and litigation is pending. Fingers crossed. We also have dental provider fraud in this case. This is an example of a dentist who was false billing or billing for services that were not necessary. In this case, a red flag in the data, Dr. Wisner was the #1 X-ray biller in the state, despite having a relatively small practice. Our investigation revealed millions of dollars in billing fraud, where he was billing for X-rays either not rendered or done unnecessarily, including on elderly and minor patients. All of these X-rays really have a detrimental health effect. And so the harm to the patients, as well as the fraud that occurred, resulted in a 7-year state prison sentence after this case went to trial. Really great outcome on that case. And finally, our last one is an example of our partnership with our federal agencies. This was a drug diversion case in which the suspect ran a clinic out of a nail salon after hours. That's what we call a red flag. This undercover investigation, we sent an agent undercover to see if he could get a prescription for controlled substances. And what the undercover investigation showed was that this suspect was prescribing controlled substances without a medical necessity, including opioids, furthering the opioid crisis in the United States. This was a joint investigation, again, with the federal government. It went to court in federal court in Sacramento, where the defendant was found guilty of 14 counts of illegally prescribing opioids and other controlled substances. He was sentenced to probation, unfortunately not a prison sentence, but still a really excellent outcome and a deterrent to all those who think that they're going to overprescribe opioids and get away with it. I mentioned earlier the referrals and the number of complaint referrals that we get to DMFVA. It's really important that everyone be aware that DMFVA not only is out there, but the kinds of cases that we can take and investigate. We receive thousands of complaint referrals every year. A lot of them come from the Department of Social Services, which oversees assisted living facilities, as well as adult residential care facilities for the developmentally disabled. We also get many, many complaints from the Department of Public Health, which oversees skilled nursing facilities and other facilities which provide medical treatment and care. But we also receive many, many complaints from other agencies which are listed here. Our fraud cases often are referred to us from the Department of Healthcare Services, but we also receive fraud, abuse, and neglect cases from local law enforcement agencies. Part of what we are doing and part of our growth as a division since 2020 is that we're doing more outreach events. So we get DMFVA's name out there and people are aware that they can refer cases to us. We are getting a number of different cases and complaints from local law enforcement agencies such as the Sacramento Sheriff's Office, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, local police departments, etc., and district attorney's offices. Sometimes district attorney's offices simply aren't equipped to handle the number of abuse and neglect cases that might come up, or they lack the expertise that we have in-house. We also get complaints and referrals from hospitals and emergency rooms, such as social workers who work in hospitals and they receive people in the emergency room from facilities and they say, this looks like a neglect case. We get referrals from them and other healthcare professionals, conservators, for people who may suspect that a conservatee is being abused financially or physically. Coroner's office, sometimes we get death cases from them. They are an excellent source of complaints. First responders, lots of fire department folks and EMTs will go to nursing homes in response to a call. And while they're there, they see the state of a person and they will refer a complaint to us. Private citizens also send us complaints. We have an online complaint referral form that you'll see in the next slide, as well as a phone hotline that you can call. Adult Protective Services, otherwise known as APS, also will send us cases of in-home abuse and neglect, oftentimes in private homes or in residential care facilities or assisted living facilities, boarding cares. Also, Office of the Long-Term Care Ombudsman. We get cases from them involving abuse and neglect within skilled nursing facilities, AKA nursing homes. Again, I mentioned our licensed authorities, DSS, the California Department of Public Health. Again, those health oversight agencies, we partner with them and we work collectively, again, to combat fraud, abuse, and neglect. This is our complaint and referral page. This QR code can be used as well, and it will send you to our complaint form. We have a telephone hotline as well as our outreach number. You can online report. I give this tip to everybody who wants to do an online report. The more information you can give us, the better. We love information. We want as much of it as possible because that helps us determine whether or not we can open an investigation. Unfortunately, the reality is that we can't open a criminal or civil investigation on every complaint that we receive. We simply don't have the manpower for it. But we want to make sure that our investigations that we do open are solid and will result in strong prosecutions. We have an email here as well as our mailing address. Sometimes we get a question if people can submit complaints anonymously. And this one comes up regularly in our outreach programs. This is what I tell people. Yes, you can submit something anonymously. There is no reason why you can't and nothing to stop you. But the other side of that, the flip side of that, is that when we do receive an anonymous complaint and we don't have a name or anyone to contact, it makes it much more difficult for us to investigate. And so if you are serious about wanting your case looked into or your complaint looked into, it is better to leave a name and contact information that we can follow up with. Again, details are key, rather than doing it anonymously. Cross-reporting tips. This is really oftentimes for our folks who come from other agencies, but for the public as well, it can be useful. Don't wait to report something. Report it as soon as you are able to. And again, provide as many details as you can. This email is for our outreach folks. If you do want to email them, that is another way in which you can file a complaint. And finally, the DOJ, we are hiring. We have openings for attorneys, agents, auditors, sometimes nurses, and IT specialists. Those are some examples of the folks we are hiring. I can tell you that I love working at the Department of Justice. I feel fulfilled in my career. I have that passion for criminal prosecution, particularly in elder abuse, and I am fulfilled in this job, and it's a great, wonderful place to work. This QR code will take you to the Department of Justice's hiring page, in which you can find out more information about what it's like to work for the DOJ, as well as job openings and the process it takes to become a state employee. And at this time, I think I am finished. And so I will turn it over to our folks for the Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan, for that information. Let me see. That was very helpful. And I know that some people submitted some questions earlier on, and we're going to try and get to as many as possible. I think we also see that there's some questions here during the live session too, so I encourage you to use that Q&A function on Zoom. But let me start, Megan, with a question that probably a lot of people have with respect to the family members and so forth. And that is that if someone has a family member in a nursing home or other kind of residential care facility, is there anything that they can do that you would recommend that they do to make sure that they don't become a victim of abuse or neglect? I know obviously our office handles a lot of cases after complaints have come in already about incidences. What can be done to prevent those from happening in the first place?
Sure. I love this question. I love it. First, I'm going to give this caveat that this question is my own opinion and it doesn't reflect any sort of official position or policy of the Attorney General. This is my opinion based on my experience. Working in the criminal justice system throughout my career, when you work in the criminal justice system, either as a prosecutor or as a police officer, you are handling cases involving bad outcomes, bad things that have already happened. And you are responding and prosecuting, investigating those things. So what I love about this question is it's more focused on the prevention of crimes and bad outcomes from happening. I can tell you that I've had 2 grandparents who were in nursing homes. And so my advice is based on my family's experience with my grandparents. And the number one recommendation that I have is to visit, be a presence in the facility, because what you will get is the staff and the caretakers at the facility will know that your loved one gets visitors. And there are people coming in, oftentimes unexpectedly, they never know when you're coming, who are going to notice things about your loved one. They're going to notice if they smell bad. They're going to notice if they haven't been changed, or if they're unkempt, or if they're dirty and they haven't had their nails cut, things like that. So it incentivizes staff to take better care of your loved one if you visit, and you visit often. I can tell you with my grandfather, when he went into a nursing home, initially my parents put him in a really nice place that was about 35 minutes away. And they realized, it's not very convenient to visit grandpa. So they moved him to a place that wasn't as nice, but it was it was right between my dad's work and our house. So my dad would pop in all the time, unannounced. And it wasn't the length of the visit. Sometimes it would only be a 5 or 10 minute visit, but it kept the staff on their toes. And as a result, my grandfather got better care. So in short, visit often. It's not the length of the visit that matters, it's the frequency, in my opinion.
That sounds like excellent advice. We got a number of questions, I think, about the complaint process also. And so let me start with one question that was asking about the timeline. So they're referring to the matter that you discussed, the People v. Anderson case, which I think involved the case at some sort of residential care facility. And they're asking about what's the timeline for which one can contact the DOJ to investigate a matter that's maybe similar to what was described in People v. Anderson.
Well, I mean, like I mentioned, the sooner the better. You know, a lot of times we get complaints that have been sent to us. People call into the Department of Public Health, and then the Department of Public Health refers it to us. You can contact us and the Department of Public Health. You know, there's a lot of different options for people to go to. There's a lot of resources out there. The Department of Public Health, I do recommend people contacting them regarding any sort of complaint that might have occurred in a facility. When we get a complaint, it does take us some time because we have to request records. We have to look into the matter. We oftentimes have to interview people. So it can take a while, sometimes even years, to investigate a complaint if we're doing it well. And we strive always to have excellent investigations. So it also just kind of depends on a case-by-case basis. There really isn't any sort of set time frame that cases have to occur within or typically do.
Are there applicable like limitations periods, statute of limitations, and so people are encouraged to bring those complaints as soon as possible, just in case?
Yes, absolutely. So cases have to be brought, physical abuse cases of an elder have to be brought within 5 years. A case has to be filed. So again, also, the older the facts are, the harder it is to investigate. That's just a good rule of thumb. So when a case is fresh, so to speak, it makes it easier for us to investigate.
Great. Similar to the previous question, somebody from a public office said that they often direct constituents to appropriate offices with specific complaints. And so the question is, do you recommend that constituents report their Medi-Cal facilities complaints to other state departments, local law enforcement, and other government offices individually, or all of the above? So sort of like who all to report to, just DMFEA, or do you recommend reporting to other agencies as well? And then also, would a complainant receive some kind of reference number for their complaint if they submit it directly to our office?
Okay, let me take the first question on that first. Yes, absolutely. I recommend referring cases to multiple agencies simply because we can't investigate every complaint that we get, as well as the fact that these oversight agencies such as DSS or the Department of Healthcare Services or the Department of Public Health, they handle often regulatory incidents. So incidents that aren't necessarily criminal in nature, but can affect the daily life of the people in facilities or, who, I'm trying to think of this, regulatory issues such as staffing or such as, quality of life issues within a facility. Oftentimes, the fastest way to get those sorts of issues resolved is going through, for example, the Department of Public Health. So I recommend that you report to as many people. Plus, there's just the adage of the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So more people you complain to, the higher likelihood you have of somebody listening. And your second question was?
Was, if a complaint is filed directly with our office, or perhaps if you know of other offices, will the complainant receive any kind of reference number that they can use for, I guess, for follow-up? Do you know how that process works?
I don't specifically know off the top of my head, but we do have quote intake numbers when we get complaints. So I do think that they will get at least a number assigned, and then they can follow up saying, I called and this was the intake number. But I don't know that totally off the top of my head. I do apologize.
Sure, and it's probably good practice for anyone who submits a complaint to sort of note the time and date, maybe perhaps when they submitted the complaint, for easy reference in case there isn't an obvious number for reference.
Yes.
Makes sense. I wanted to ask also about persons who are maybe looking out for a facility, a residential facility for a family member, a nursing home or other type of facility. Do you know if there's any sources of information that they can use to look at that might provide some indication of quality or safety of particular facilities?
Is that a question from in the chat?
No, it's a question that just came up earlier on. In terms of like a resource or online source that might be available for somebody who wanted to look for specific information about a facility that they're considering.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll tell you what I would do if I was looking at a facility to put my loved one in. I would go, if it was a skilled nursing facility or a facility where they provide medical care, those facilities are going to be overseen by the Department of Public Health. If it's a boarding care or an assisted living facility, or even a daycare, they have adult daycares, they're called adult daycares, or a daycare for a child, whatever it might be, those are overseen by the Department of Social Services. So what I would do is I would go to those websites, because those websites have facility search mechanisms, where you can search the name of the facility and you can find out if they have been cited or how many complaints they've had. So for example, for nursing homes, you can go to the Department of Public Health. You can just Google even Department of Public Health facility search or nursing home search, and it will pop up. You can go to that website, put in the facility name, and it will show you their star rating. All of these nursing homes have a star rating, 1 through 5. And you can go through and you can look and see how many complaints have they had so far. How does this compare to the state average? Are they above average? Are they below average? You can look at the nature of the complaints and it will show you, okay, this is a complaint related to lack of care or bad discharge or falls or whatever it might be. And it is a wealth of information that will allow you to vet the facility that you might be interested in for your loved one.
Yeah, it's very helpful. I know there was a question about that rating system and I think that's the federal CMS star rating system that you're referring to.
Yes.
Do you know if that shows how many the sources that you talked about actually mentioned how many complaints were filed against a particular facility on those websites?
I think it does show, it has like, I think literally a bar graph, and it will show the number of complaints. It might be for the year prior. They break them down by year, which is also helpful. It also shows the ownership, so you can kind of look in to see if it's been consistent or if it's been sold a lot. And yes, you can look at the different kinds of complaints, and sometimes it will even have survey results, because the Department of Public Health will go in and conduct surveys as a result of receiving a complaint. So when that happens, they will go in and they'll investigate and sometimes do a random sampling of the residents. And so you can really see how many complaints they've gotten, the nature of those complaints, and again, importantly, compare it to the state average. I think that's such a cool bit of information that they have.
I see another question in the Q&A asking about internal audits. I'm not sure if you have any information about that. They're asking if facilities conduct their own internal audits as a proactive measure to prevent fraud or ensure compliance. And do you know if they do, and if there's any particular term for the any kind of audits that facilities do for themselves internally? Or I'm sorry, and like let me this is an add-on as well. Are you aware of any existing guidelines or checklists that are out there with respect to compliance with safety or health measures?
Well, there's the law, right? There's the California's regulations on all of the different things, that the rules and guidelines that the facilities have to follow. Again, the Department of Public Health is a really great resource on this, because they are really the oversight agency for nursing homes. And I'm focusing on nursing homes here, but I want to say that DSS is the same role for assisted living facilities and boarding care, although those are a little bit less regulated. The skilled nursing facilities, these nursing homes, they are annually, I think probably even more annually, evaluated, inspected by the Department of Public Health. The Department of Public Health will respond to complaints. They will go in the building and, investigate the complaint. So what we see and what we investigate really is not so much the day-to-day operations of the facility. Those are really the focus of the Department of Public Health. We do pay attention, and we are obviously aware of the regulations and the laws that guide nursing homes, because that's part of our practice. We utilize those guidelines when we prosecute cases. But I think for this question, the answer would be more in DPH's wheelhouse.
Right, that makes sense. And again, just to repeat, like CDPH is the California Department of Public Health, which is the main regulatory agency when it comes to nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities. And then you mentioned, I think, DSS, which is the Department of Social Services, which is the agency that regulates assisted living facilities. Is that right?
Yes, and I apologize to everybody for the acronyms. I do it now so automatically. I try not to, but it's part of the game working in my job.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another question about some people have heard the term ombudsman.
Yes.
With respect to elder abuse and maybe dependent abuse and neglect. Can you maybe talk about them? What your understanding of the role of the ombudsman is? Does our office work with them?
Yes, we do. Ombudsman, I love the Office of the Ombudsman, because they are in many ways boots on the ground in facilities. So they are there as advocates for the residents. They work with the residents and they handle complaints, and they oftentimes can be the voice of the residents in dealing with the facility. So for example, a resident may be looking at getting discharged, and they want to go and they take their complaint to the ombudsman, who then will deal with the facility on their behalf. So the ombudsmen are really, really great about getting information firsthand and understanding what is going on in a facility, and just advocating for the residents. We do get complaints from them. We work with them. They are an important partner for us in dealing with our work in nursing homes. they also will work closely with the Department of Public Health. So sometimes they make the complaint to the Department of Public Health, and then the Department of Public Health will refer a complaint over to us. But I love the Ombudsman's program, and I think it's so important. And I really just clap my hands and applaud the work that they do because it's so important.
Great. I think we might have two more questions here. First one is, if is someone obligated to report an incident of elder abuse? And will there be liability or some sort of penalty for not reporting elder abuse? Can you speak to that? I know that gets into the subject of mandated reporters. Maybe if you could touch on that a little bit. I know it's a complicated, complex area, but I think some information about that might be helpful.
Yeah. So if you are a mandated reporter, and you don't report elder abuse that you see, you can be held criminally responsible for that. There's a separate crime called failure to report, in which a mandated reporter fails to report abuse that they see in the facility. So for mandated reporters, they can be held liable. As for just the general public or a citizen, I would say appeal to the goodness in your heart. And yes, you should report something that you see that is bad. And by report, I mean, tell the administrator at the facility. You can also call the police, report it however you see fit. But, the only way we're going to make sure that nursing homes and other facilities are safe is if everybody is speaking the truth and pointing out bad actors and abuse, so that these folks, these bad actors and these abusers can be taken out of those environments so they can't prey on vulnerable people. And it's so important to report any abuse that you see.
Absolutely. And then we have a final question from somebody who works at a nonprofit, and they're just asking about the process for benefits. I know that our office doesn't do that, but are you aware of where questions can be directed for with respect to benefits or beneficiaries of the Medi-Cal program?
So, well, I'll say, I guess the question is going towards how to get signed up for Medi-Cal?
I guess questions about eligibility, if there's issues with eligibility and where those questions might be directed to.
Right. So every county has a local Medi-Cal benefits office that you can go to ask questions. Again, I love Google. Just do a Google search on Medi-Cal eligibility and it will bring up. I will say on a personal note, my son has a disability. He is a Medi-Cal beneficiary. I think I spent an entire summer in 2020 trying to sign him up for benefits. It can be a tricky, complicated process. Luckily, we had the local regional center to help us along with that. So if you are, talking about someone with a disability, again, reaching out to the regional center in your area, or, just doing a Google search. There's a lot of people out there, again, and I would call them up and say, help me, please help me. And that process can definitely be accomplished. It's an important benefit for many people. And again, that's why we're at DMFEA, to make sure that the program is secured and safeguarded and is used properly for the people who need it the most.
Thank you. I think that's it. Sarah?
Yes. Thank you so much for responding to all the questions, and thank you everyone for sending the questions. Thank you all for joining us today for our Demystifying the DOJ on the Division of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse. We hope that this presentation was informative and useful to you. Please keep in contact with us. You can always reach our office by emailing us at care@doj.ca.gov. The resources and links mentioned in this presentation are available on our website, oag.ca.gov/care/demystifying-the-DOJ. And the recording of this presentation will also be available there shortly. We host these presentations quarterly, and the next one is scheduled for Tuesday, September 9th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And this one will be focused on the California DOJ Division of Law Enforcement. If you are interested in watching any of our previous presentations in which we have covered the Office of Care, Reentry, Reproductive Rights, Consumer Protections, and so many other programs, you can find all the recordings on our website at oag.ca.gov/care/demystifying-the-DOJ. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to our presenters, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.